Hello and welcome to the A-List. I'm David Moore, and with me today is CBS News anchor Rob Johnson. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do as a news anchor?
As a news anchor, I come in, typically we have several meetings, so a normal day would be maybe 2 to 11, and we have meetings planning for the early show, the 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and then planning for the 10 o'clock news, and we'll come in and decide what stories we're going to cover and how we're going to cover them. And typically, on a normal day, I will also spend a lot of time responding to emails and phone calls, because I get invited to do a lot of events in the community like this, and I handle it directly. Somebody else doesn't do it for me, so I spend several hours each day wading through those, trying to look at my schedule, figuring out what I can and can't do, or if I can do it, when can I do it, that sort of thing. And then we start our show preparation probably about 3:30, for the 5 o'clock, maybe 3:30 or 4. I'll go in, get makeup done, which I have none on today, and just prepare, look at the scripts, make sure they're done the way that I like them done. So unless I report on a story, I can't write a story. So if it's somebody, so a writer, a producer, somebody else has to do it. So I have to go through and make sure it's grammatically, factually correct, and it's written the way that I speak, because hopefully when people see me read a story, it doesn't sound like I'm talking at them, it sounds like I'm talking to them.
Yeah. And again, we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate that you take it personal and you look through all your emails. Can you tell us a little bit about what you enjoy about your job?
I love being able to tell a story. I mean, I love a big news day. If there's a big news day, if it's, you know, the big snowstorm, the blizzard, if it's Rod Blagojevich in court or going off to prison, those kinds of big days, you love being where the action is. So I always like those days. And I also like being able to tell somebody's story, whether it's, you know, a hard-hitting story. I do a lot of stories on concussions because I'm trying to raise awareness about concussions and how serious they are, especially to young people, you know, in your age group and younger. And so I like being able to tell those stories. And sometimes we do the Your Chicago stories, which are the features, which are a little lighter edged, and it's a place or a person in Chicago that we think is interesting that somebody else has written to us and said, you should really look at this person. So I like being able to tell somebody's story. I get great satisfaction out of doing that.
So now, how'd you begin doing it? I remember you telling us, or telling me before we even came on the set, that you started halfway through college, and most of us here have started in our high school.
Well, you all certainly have a head start. I mean, in high school, I didn't have any of this, and then I went to college, and we barely had this. I went to DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana. My dad was an international businessman. He'd done kind of everything, and so I went to college. I thought I was going to do, you know, business, whatever that meant. And I took my first economics class, and it didn't go so well. And I thought, well, I wonder what else is out there. And so I started doing the graveyard shift at the radio station, and I enjoyed it, and I kept doing it. And then I started doing news, and then I started doing sports, and I started doing promotions. Then I did morning DJing, which is different than just going in and playing a few records. It's, you know, you got to prepare. Well, yeah, and you got to have some bits too. You got to have humor. That's hard. Being funny, you know, is hard, and that took probably the most preparation. So I immersed myself in the radio station, and since I've graduated from DePaul many years ago, 23 almost now, they have a media center there now. So they have a television station, a newspaper, and the radio station all under one roof. So the program there now is terrific, and you can do whatever you know, whatever interest you have. But when I was there, I focused mainly on the radio station, and was able to do some TV internships along the way eventually.
You were telling us about, as I was explaining to you about the awards that we won here, you explained other awards that you have won in college, and is that what maybe got you towards your path?
I don't think it was winning the award that got. I remember doing the first big story I ever did in college, and it ended up being a national story, and I ended up doing a documentary, a radio documentary on it, and we ended up winning an award. So I remember the girl that I worked on it with, we got to go to Nashville, we got to go to this big party, we got to win our award, and I thought, oh, this happens all the time, this must be it. You know, you do a story, you win an award for it. Well, that's not the way it works, and you rarely do that. But I think, I don't do this to win awards, I do it because I love to do it. And if you do something and you're really proud of it and you submit it, and eventually if it wins something, whether it's an AP award or whether it's an Emmy, I've won a few Emmy awards too, I mean, you get great satisfaction out of it. because it's something that you really cared about. But I don't say, gosh, I'm going to do this story next week and I hope I'm going to submit it for an Emmy.
Yeah.
I don't think that way.
Well, same here. I mean, some of us, we look and we think that our work is great, but we all expect to win things. I mean, it's not expect, but we like to win things as well.
Sure.
But okay, how many years have you done television
This
so far?
is my 23rd year. 23 years.
Out of 23 years, what has been the best part of being in television or anchoring or being on radio?
I think my best, I was working in Lafayette, Louisiana back in I think it was 1993. And so it's a smaller market and not a whole lot going on there. And for whatever reason, we were covering big stories back then, a lot more than we cover big stories, even in a place like Chicago now. So I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana. One week, the Pope is in Denver, and there's 100,000 kids following the Pope around in Denver. And I got to go cover the Pope in Denver 1 week. And then the next week, President Clinton had just taken office in '93. He was trying to get his budget passed, and some of the Louisiana senators were on the fence. So they said, we'll get all of the Louisiana media, we'll bring them up to the White House, we'll show them a good time. They'll go back and talk about our budget plan to their, to their readers and their listeners and their viewers back in Louisiana, and it'll be great. And so I got to do stand-ups on the White House lawn. I got to do a press conference with President Clinton in the White House while I was there. Got to meet all these interesting people that were part of the administration. And so I still say that was the most fun I ever had. 1 week I'm in Denver covering the Pope. The next week I'm in Washington, D.C. covering at the White House covering President Clinton. And I'm 25 years old at the time. So it was pretty cool.
Wow.
So that was there have been other big stories, though, too. I mean, I've been able to cover some big ones. Hurricane Katrina is one I'll never forget because it was so horrific, and it was in New Orleans. It was in our country. It looked like a third world country, and every day we would get up, we'd have to drive 2 hours because you couldn't be anywhere near New Orleans, and we'd have to cover the horrible disaster that had occurred, all the flooding, and saw some things that I don't care to remember, even though I can't get them out of my head. Those are the serious stories. Covering the Bears when they made the Super Bowl run in 2007 on South Beach in Miami. We were there for 10 days. They ended up losing to the Colts, but that was the other end of the spectrum. So Hurricane Katrina, here's a serious story that really matters. And then the other end of the spectrum, we're on South Beach for 10 days, and everybody's happy. So you went up to a Bears fan, they say, hey, go find Bears fans. And you'd say, well, that's easy. All you got to look for is the jerseys. So you could walk down South Beach, and there they are, and they're all happy to talk to you because they're there for the Super Bowl, too. So that's kind of the two ends of the spectrum when it comes to big stories.
Yeah. Now, is there anybody that you love to work with specifically, or is it just everybody at your news station that you love to work with?
Oh, I like working with everybody. I mean, I think we have a good team, and I think that we've developed a chemistry and a camaraderie through the years. You just don't put somebody next to you. You know, Kate Sullivan came maybe 3+ years ago, I think. I think it's 3 years now, almost 3 years. And you don't know each other, you've met each other, you're co-anchoring together, and I would say that we're a whole lot better now than we were 2.5 years ago, but it's not something that happens immediately.
So it would take a lot of chemistry to put
Well, I mean, I think it
together.
takes just being out there 2 or 3 times a day for a period of time and getting to know each other, you know, beyond, say, the newsroom.
Yeah.
And knowing a little bit about, you know, families and friends and, you know, that sort of thing. So I mean, everybody that I work with I think is very talented, and I like working with them for different reasons. You know, Jay Levine, who's our chief correspondent, has been around for years, always covering big stories, always interviewing interesting people. And so when he's on the set and we're debriefing him, we're talking to him, I'm always fascinated because he's got an interesting story to tell.
Okay, I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. What's the best show on TV that you have ever liked? It's just out there, just the best show ever. Doesn't necessarily have to be on your station. Just any show you've ever watched.
Best show ever. I would say when The Sopranos was on HBO, I loved that show. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was clever, well written, well conceived, a little violent. I grant you that. I'm not a big violence guy. Some of that was hard to watch, but I thought from a storytelling standpoint, it was really solid. And I think even to a lesser degree, and it hasn't been on the air, or it's almost been on the air almost as long now, but Mad Men on AMC. I love that show. It has a lot more hits and misses. I felt like The Sopranos was more consistently excellent. And I feel like Mad Men right now, when it's a good one, and I thought last week's was a great one, I was just sitting there mesmerized. And some weeks it's not great, but typically it's a really good show. And as for journalism, if you're talking about a journalism show, I think 60 Minutes top to bottom. There's a reason it's been on the air for 45 years.
Yeah, same here. I love just
It's because
60
it breaks
minutes.
every rule. You're not supposed to be able to tell a 12 or 15-minute story. You're not supposed to not have any graphics underneath. You're not supposed to be able to do those things. And they do those things, and they're wildly successful. And also another, and I'll stop after this one, but Real Sports on HBO is brilliant. And it's not even about the scores and the runs, hits, and errors. It's about these great people stories on on HBO, on Real Sports.
Yeah, I'm just on 60 Minutes. I love 60 Minutes. My family and I, we just sit down together on Sundays afternoon. It's basically 60 Minutes at dinner, and then Amazing Race, and then bed.
Yeah, no. They've got a good Sunday night.
CBS News and then bed.
Well, they've anchored it. They've anchored it with 60 Minutes there for years, for a reason, because it's a great table setter for the rest of the evening. You're resetting your week. You sit down, you watch 60 Minutes, and the stories they tell, and the ability they have to travel all over the world and to spend time working on it. I mean, for people like me, that's our dream. If I could travel and spend several weeks or months on a story and be able to tell it in the right way, we would. I mean, everybody in my business, we would love that. So they're kind of the gold standard when it comes to journalism, as far as I'm concerned.
It's been great spending time with you, and love being on the show with you. And thank you for being here. I love spending time with you.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll keep in touch.
Oh, sure, absolutely. An aspiring journalist, and everybody else who's behind the camera and in the control room as well. I'm always interested to see people's work and to help them out however I can, because I remember how hard it was for me to get into the business. So for those of you guys who are into it, I'm always available.
And I'm David Moore, and thanks for watching the A-List.